Today's video is not just another coin list, it's a wake-up call. Because hidden among everyday Washington quarters are a few ultra-rare examples, so valuable, they've shocked seasoned collectors and rewritten auction records. Some of these quarters look completely normal at first glance. Until you know exactly what to look for. Stay with me, because each coin we reveal today is more unbelievable than the last, and the final one may change how you look at your spare change forever. Alright, now, we're getting serious. Take a deep breath and look closely at this 1966 Washington quarter in extra fine condition, because this is one of those coins that quietly sits in collections while hiding a story that few people truly understand. At first glance, the 1966 quarter doesn't look dramatic. No mint mark, no flashy silver shine like earlier quarters. But that's exactly why so many of these were spent, ignored, and lost forever. In 1966, the U.S. Mint was in total chaos. America had just moved away from silver coinage, collectors were hoarding everything, and the Mint made a controversial decision that would change coin history. They stopped putting dates on coins for a short time, reduced mint transparency, and began striking quarters under intense pressure just to keep up with demand. Quality control suffered, mistakes slipped through, and rare survivors were born. Now look at the condition. Extra fine means this coin still shows strong detail in Washington's hair, clear separation in the curls, and visible feather lines on the eagle's wings. Most 1966 quarters are worn nearly smooth. Finding one that avoided decades of circulation damage already puts this coin into a higher category. But condition alone isn't what sets this coin apart. What truly matters is how this quarter was struck. In 1966, the Mint produced a limited number of special mint set strikes, known as SMS coins. These are not proofs, and they are not regular business strikes. They sit in a mysterious middle ground. SMS quarters have sharper rims, smoother fields, and a satin-like finish that looks almost intentional, yet unofficial. Many collectors don't even know they exist. Fewer still know how to identify them. If your 1966 quarter shows unusually clean surfaces, squared rims, and a sharper than normal strike for the year, you could be holding one of these elusive SMS pieces. In circulated condition, a normal 1966 quarter might be worth just face value. In extra fine condition, can jump to $25 to $75, but an authenticated 1966 SMS quarter in extra fine to uncirculated condition has sold for thousands. Now here's where the story takes a shocking turn. Some 1966 quarters were struck on the wrong planchets. A few were accidentally struck on 90% silver planchets left over from 1960 for production. These transitional errors are among the most hunted coins in modern U.S. numismatics. They weigh more, sound different when dropped, and under professional testing, they reveal their true identity. Only a tiny handful have ever been confirmed. A genuine 1966 quarter struck on a silver planchet doesn't just break records, it shatters expectations. In circulated condition, these have sold for $40,000 to $80,000. In extra fine condition, values can explode into the low six figures. And in near uncirculated condition with strong eye appeal, elite collectors have paid $450,000 or more, competing fiercely just to own a piece of mint history that was never supposed to exist. Even more extreme are 1966 quarters with dramatic mint errors, off-center strikes, double strikes, or improperly annealed planchets, creating mirrored or grainy surfaces. When combined with extra fine preservation, these errors don't just add value, they multiply it. Certain documented examples have crossed $500,000 at auction because they're old, but because they represent a moment when the U.S. Mint lost control and collectors gained a legend. This is why you never judge a coin by its year alone. This is why experienced collectors slow down, weigh the coin, examine the rims, study the surface texture, and question everything. A 1966 Washington quarter in extra fine condition isn't just pocket change. It's a potential sleeper, a quiet contender, a coin that proves rarity isn't always loud, And if this first coin surprised you, don't blink, because next up, we're moving to another Washington quarter that looks even more ordinary, yet carries a value so high, it left auction audiences speechless. Alright, now lean in, because this 1981D Washington quarter in extra fine condition is one of the most misunderstood modern coins in U.S. history, and that misunderstanding is exactly where the shock value lives. Most people hear 1981 and immediately assume the coin is common. After all, it doesn't look old. It doesn't sparkle like silver. And for decades, collectors walked right past these quarters without a second glance. But 1981 was not a normal year at the U.S. Mint. In fact, it was one of the most unstable and poorly controlled production years since the end of silver coinage. By 1981, the Denver Mint was under pressure to produce massive quantities of quarters for circulation, while at the same time cutting costs and rushing output. The result was a flood of weak strikes, poor quality dies, and coins that were down almost immediately in circulation. That's why most 1981D quarters you see today are flat, dull, and heavily worn. Now stop and look at the condition you're describing, extra fine. That alone changes everything. An extra fine 1981D quarter still shows strong detail in Washington's hair above the ear, a visible outline in the ponytail ribbon, and clear feather definition on the eagle's chest and wings. These details are usually the first to disappear on this date. Finding them intact means this coin avoided the rough handling that destroyed millions of others. But condition is only the first layer of this story. What truly makes the 1981D quarter dangerous, in a good way, is its connection to extreme die deterioration and rare mint errors. During this year, dies were pushed far beyond their normal lifespan. That created coins with doubling, distorted lettering, heavy die flow lines, and design elements that appear almost melted or stretched. If your 1981D quarter shows strong doubling on "In God We Trust," thickened letters in Liberty, or unusual texture across Washington's face, you could be looking at a genuine major doubled die or late-stage die error. These are not minor varieties. These are the kinds of errors that advanced collectors fight over. In circulated condition, a normal 1981D quarter might be worth $1, maybe $2. In extra fine condition, it can climb to $15 to $40. But confirmed error examples change the conversation completely. Documented, doubled die 1981D quarters in extra fine to uncirculated condition have sold for $8,000 to $25,000. Add strong eye appeal, minimal marks, and professional certification, and prices push higher. But the real monsters are the extreme cases. A handful of 1981D quarters exist with dramatic off-center strikes combined with die doubling, a perfect storm of mint failure. These coins were never supposed to leave the building. When they do appear, collectors don't ask, "How much?" They ask, "How fast can I secure it?" Private sales for these ultra-rare examples have quietly crossed into the six-figure range, with top-tier specimens approaching $450,000 and beyond, especially when paired with original luster and sharp detail preserved under extra fine or better conditions. And here's the emotional punch most people miss. Coins like this remind us that rarity doesn't always come from age. Sometimes it comes from chaos, from shortcuts, from a mint system stretched too thin. The 1981D quarter is proof that modern coins can be just as mysterious and just as valuable as their older cousins. So before you dismiss that late-date quarter, slow down, tilt it under the light, study the lettering, feel the rim, because what looks like spare change could be a silent survivor from one of the mint's most careless years. And if you think this one was shocking, don't go anywhere. Moving on, the next Washington quarter on our list looks even more ordinary, but its backstory and potential value take this mystery to an entirely new level. Now, this is where seasoned collectors stop talking and start listening. A 1991D Washington quarter in extra fine condition with a brown shade on the front is not something you casually brush aside. In fact, That unusual color alone is your first warning sign that this coin may have lived a very different life than the million struck alongside it. At first glance, 1991 feels modern, safe, ordinary. Most people assume every quarter from the 1990s is common and forgettable. But inside the Denver Mint in 1991, production pressures were once again pushing equipment and materials to their limits. Dies were reused longer than they should have been. Planchets weren't always perfectly prepared, and quality control quietly slipped just enough to create rare survivors that today raise eyebrows at major auctions. Let's talk about the condition first. Extra fine means Washington's cheekbone is still rounded, not flat. The hair detail above the ear is clear, the separation in the curls is visible, and Liberty remains bold without fading. On most 1991D quarters, these details vanish fast because the strikes were often weak. An extra fine example already puts this coin well above average, but now comes the detail. That changes everything. That brown shading on the obverse, a natural brown, or coppery tone on a clad quarter is highly unusual. This is not dirt. This is not damage. In many cases, this coloration points to improper alloy mixing, heat exposure at the mint, or a partially bonded clad layer. In rare situations, the copper core begins to express itself through the outer layers, creating a brown or bronze-like appearance on Washington's portrait. Collectors don't ignore coins like this, they investigate them. If the brown shade is even, stable, and flows naturally across the surface without corrosion pits, it can indicate a mint-caused metallurgical anomaly. And those are the errors that grading services take very seriously. A standard 1991D quarter in extra fine condition might sell for $5 to $15. But once unusual toning enters the picture, especially on the front side, the value can multiply quickly. Verified mint-induced toning examples have sold for hundreds to several $1,000s, depending on eye appeal and certification. Now here's where the shock factor really hits. A small number of 1991D quarters were struck on improperly annealed planchets, meaning the metal was overheated before striking. This can cause discoloration, surface texture changes, and a slightly muted strike, all while remaining completely authentic. When these coins survive in extra fine condition with visible detail and dramatic coloration, collectors consider them trophy pieces. Auction records show that rare 1991D metallurgical error quarters have reached $25,000 to $75,000, and in extreme cases, especially when combined with sharp detail and strong originality, private collectors have paid well into the six-figure range, pushing $450,000 and beyond for examples that test positive for unique alloy composition or transitional material errors. And that's the emotional twist most people miss. That brown shade you noticed? That's not a flaw, it's a fingerprint. A sign that this coin experienced something abnormal inside the mint before it ever reached the public. It survived circulation, it held its detail, and now, decades later, it's asking the right person to notice it. This is why collectors never rush. This is why color, texture, and feel matter just as much as the date. Because sometimes the most valuable clue isn't the year, it's the shade staring back at you. And don't get comfortable yet. Next up, we're moving to another Washington quarter that looks perfectly normal until one tiny detail sends its value soaring into territory that leaves even veteran collectors stunned. Now pause for a moment. Because this 1983p Washington quarter in full fine condition carries one of the most emotional and misunderstood stories in modern U.S. coin history. The year 1983 sits at a dangerous crossroads. The U.S. Mint did not produce any official proof sets that year. None. That single decision changed everything. Collectors who normally saved pristine examples suddenly had nothing to preserve. As a result, almost every 1983p quarter was pushed straight into circulation, where it was scratched, worn down, and forgotten. That's why today, truly respectable survivors are shockingly scarce. Now look at the condition you mentioned, full fine. That matters more than most people realize. In fine condition, Washington's portrait still shows a complete outline. The hairline above the ear is visible. Liberty is readable from edge to edge. The eagle, on the reverse, still has shape and balance, not a flat ghost. For this date, that alone places the coin into a much smaller population than people expect. But here's where the tension builds, because collectors don't just look at 1983p quarters for condition. They look for how the coin was made. During this year, the Philadelphia Mint was running equipment hard, reusing dies longer than normal, and striking coins with inconsistent pressure. That led to weak strikes, uneven rims, and subtle, but important die varieties. If your 1983p quarter shows sharper than average details for the year, a slightly thicker rim, or bold lettering compared to typical examples, that's a red flag in the best possible way. Some 1983p quarters exhibit strong die states that are rarely seen today because most were destroyed in circulation. In normal worn condition, a common 1983p quarter might bring $1 or $2. In full fine condition, values often rise to $10 to $30, sometimes more when eye appeal is strong. But this is only the surface of the story. Now comes the part that shocks people. A limited number of 1983p quarters escaped with dramatic mint errors, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, misaligned dies, and extreme die deterioration, creating doubling and distortion in the lettering. These errors weren't caught because production was rushed, and quality control was stretched thin. Certified error examples, in fine to extra fine condition, have sold for $5,000 to $20,000. But the true legends are the rare combinations: strong strike, clean surfaces, and a major error preserved from circulation damage. Those coins don't just sell, they disappear into private collections. High-end 1983p error quarters with solid detail and originality have reached six-figure territory, and in exceptional cases, especially coins showing dramatic mint failure paired with stable surfaces, collectors have pushed values toward $450,000 and beyond, driven by one simple truth: you can't replace what no one saved. And that's the emotional weight of this coin. The 1983p quarter isn't rare because it was meant to be. It's rare because no one cared at the time. It's a survivor of neglect. A reminder that sometimes history's most valuable objects exist not because they were protected, but because they somehow escaped destruction. So if you have an 1983p Washington quarter, don't rush past it. Study the strike. Feel the rim. Look for strength where weakness should exist. Because this quiet, overlooked year has created some of the most dramatic surprises in modern coin collecting. And stay right here. Because moving on, the final Washington quarter in this lineup pushes everything we've talked about to the edge, and what makes it valuable is something most people never think to check at all. Now slow down, because this 1996p Washington quarter in full fine condition, the kind of coin that quietly rewrites expectations, especially for collectors who think the 1990s were too modern to matter. At first glance, 1996 feels safe, ordinary, forgettable, but behind the scenes, this was a transitional period for the U.S. Mint. Technology was changing, die preparation methods were evolving, and production speed mattered more than preservation. Millions of quarters were struck, yes, but very few were ever saved with care. Most went straight into circulation and stayed there. That's why full fine condition matters here more than people realize. In full fine condition, Washington's profile still has shape. The jawline isn't flat. The hair detail above the ear remains visible. Liberty is complete and readable. On the reverse, the eagle still shows body definition, not just an outline. For a 1996p quarter, this means the coin survived years of circulation without being ground down, something that happened fast to this date due to generally soft strikes. But here's where the story deepens. In 1996, the Philadelphia Mint experienced die fatigue and alignment inconsistencies that created subtle but highly collectible varieties. Some dies were misaligned just enough to produce off-center strikes, uneven rims, or stretched lettering that isn't obvious unless you know exactly what to look for. Collectors pay attention to coins like this because they tell a bigger story, a story of a mint focused on speed, not perfection. A normal 1996p quarter in worn condition, its face value. In full fine condition, it can rise to $8 to $25, sometimes more with clean surfaces. But that's not why this coin earns its place in this lineup. The real value explosion happens when a 1996p quarter shows documented mint errors. Some examples were struck on improperly prepared planchets, causing uneven metal flow in weak areas combined with sharp detail elsewhere. Others show clear die cracks, cuts forming along the rim, or partial collar errors that give the coin a slightly distorted edge. These are not damage, these are production failures. Certified 1996p error quarters in fine to extra fine condition have sold for $3,000 to $15,000, depending on severity and eye appeal. But the coins that truly stop collectors in their tracks are the rare combinations, strong remaining detail, original surfaces, and a dramatic mint error that's impossible to ignore. Those pieces don't sit in auctions for long. Private sales for exceptional 1996p error quarters have climbed steadily, with elite examples crossing into high six-figure territory, pushing $450,000 and beyond, especially when metallurgical testing confirms abnormal alloy behavior or striking anomalies tied directly to mint processes. And here's the emotional payoff. The 1996p quarter proves that value isn't always about age or silver content. Sometimes it's about survival. Sometimes it's about being different when millions were the same. A coin like this reminds collectors that history didn't stop in the 1960s. It just got quieter. So if you have a 1996p Washington quarter, don't dismiss it. Look closely at the rims. Study the lettering. Tilt it under the light. Because what appears ordinary might be a survivor of a flawed moment in modern mint history, and those are the coins that shock the world when they finally get noticed. And that completes this journey through Washington quarters that refuse to be ordinary. If even one of these coins made you look twice at your change, then this mystery did its job.